it was like I was just pushed into this life and this world that I didn't belong in. I couldn't believe he was gone. He was my third child. I have 4 children. He was my third. And he knew from a very, very young age that he wanted to be a police officer. When he was in junior high and high school, he never went, to kids' homes who were having parties because their parents were gone, or snuck into nightclubs because he said, Mom, I can't be at the wrong place at the wrong time. It'll, mess up my chances of becoming a police officer. So he was a very conscientious person of his future and what he wanted that to look like. Not to say that he wasn't a prankster or caused trouble in the home, because he did, let me tell you. But he was a very studious child. He applied for the police academy the minute he got out of high school, and he was too young. And so he took a job at Target as a security guy, and he actually won a lot of awards there at Target because he caught a lot of people shoplifting, and actually busted up like a shoplifting ring at one of our stores here not far from the house. But he kept applying to the police academy, and they kept saying, you're too young. And so finally they hired him as a police assistant. And so he would move the vehicles, from a particular substation to the garage if it needed to be fixed. Did a lot of that type of stuff. Then he went into animal control, and he did that for probably about 6 or 8 months. And they finally relented and said, fine, we'll let you in the academy. He was one of the youngest recruits at the time that he went in. I was so proud of him when he graduated from the police academy. It was his lifelong dream. He and I spent a lot of time together. He was the only one of my children who wasn't married at the time. And so we traveled a lot, went to Hawaii, and had a lot of really good memories together. Sunday was Mother's Day, and he was on duty, but he came over in the morning, and he brought me a Keurig coffee machine and told me, welcome to the 21st century, Mom, He always made fun of me, but we spent the day together, and then he went on duty, and my other son was here at the time, one of my other sons, and he was fixing dinner, and so we told Brandon, stop by for your dinner break. So he came here for dinner, and he left, and he said, I'll be back for dessert. I got a call, and I'll be back. And then he texted me and said, I'm not going to be able to make it back. We're busy. And so anyway, we finished the day off, and I went to bed. And at about 2:45 in the morning, my phone rang, and it was from a fellow Mesa police officer who was also a National Guard, and he was deployed to Iraq at the time. So he called and said, Ma, Brandon's been in a terrible accident. And I said, I gotta go. And so I kept trying to call his cell phone, and he wouldn't answer, and I just kept calling it. And I was panicking, and then the doorbell rang. And so I answered the door, and it was the Mesa Police Department telling me that he had been in an accident and they needed to take me. And we left, and I remember sitting in the back of the vehicle. The guy who was driving me there couldn't tell me anything. And I couldn't even think about who to call. Like, my mind was just blank. And I ended up calling my daughter, and I ended up actually calling my mother. And the guy who was driving actually had a police officer go pick up my mother in the middle of the night and bring her down to the hospital. But I got down there, and they told me he was in surgery, but 15 minutes later, the surgeon came out and let me know that he had passed away from his injuries.
Officer Brandon Mendoza killed yesterday by a wrong-way driver.
He was just 32 years old.
He was on his way home off the clock when he was hit head-on.
42-year-old Raul Silva Corona also died in that crash. He was driving 35 miles in the wrong direction before the collision.
It was unbelievable arriving at the church and just seeing the amount of police cars and police motorcycles and the amount of law enforcement there honoring him. We had to sit inside the cemetery office and wait about an hour for the 10-mile procession to get there. And I walked out of there to go to the gravesite, and it was just like a sea of law enforcement. And it felt good to see that many brothers of blue were there, to honor him. And then to find out and have contact with people in the community about everything he was doing that I had no clue about. I knew that he had been put in charge of a park in South Mesa that had been overrun with homeless illegals and drug dealers, and they kind of sent him down there to clean it up, and he took a modern day beat cop attitude, and he went door to door to all the residents in the neighborhood, introduced himself and said, "I'm here to clean up the park. I'm here to reclaim the park for you."
He watched over the neighborhood near Guerrero Park in Mesa. How about this? The residents there said that he knew a lot of them by name. He was dedicated to keeping that area safe. He also visited the Mesa Boys and Girls Club, often to check in on the kids there. One of the boys we spoke with says Officer Mendoza was his hero, and he now wants to be a police officer too.
He got to know them, and he got to know their children who didn't live in the homes, but if there was medical issues, he'd call their kids and say, "You need to get over here, your dad's not doing good today." He really made it a personal issue of his, and he got the homeless people situated, you know, if they were legal residents, got them situated in places, got them the help that they needed, got the drug dealers and those people arrested, cleaned it up, and then went the extra mile and approached the city about getting new playground equipment in there for the children, getting security cameras up, getting the basketball court repoured, and it just became a passion of his just to get this done for this neighborhood of people. I had no clue. He didn't brag about it. It wasn't anything that he told me about. The park that he went down and revitalized, it was called the Guerrero Lindsay Park, and the people in the neighborhood wanted it renamed the Brandon Mendoza Park. And we know the families that it's named after, and you know, I didn't want to take that away from him, but Brandon had been working on getting a lit ball field put in the middle of the park with dugouts and everything, because they had a ball field, but it wasn't really, you know, anything. And so he worked on that, and he got that done, and bleachers put in, and then he even, you know, got security cameras put up in the park. So they ended up putting his badge number and badge up on the security camera so that the kids know Brandon's always looking over them. And they renamed the ball field in the middle of the park the Brandon Mendoza Ball Field. So they honored him. You know, those kids see that sign all the time. It made me even more proud of him than I already was. Stephen King, he called me out of the blue, and I'm like, wow. You know, and he was so upset and so apologetic, and I'm thinking, here was a police officer, and I mean, it was on the news a lot. For every newscast, morning, noon, and night, for weeks after Brandon was killed, about with the people they were interviewing and the good that he had done in the community. How did that not get to the governor? How did that not get to our senators? How did that not get to our congressmen? It was pretty sad and disappointing, you know, months later when I thought about it. And I was in DC one time, and I mentioned that. I was on Breitbart Radio, and I mentioned it. And lo and behold, I got a call from Senator Flake's office, and he wanted to meet with me that day, and I did. And when I went into his office, there was a beautiful picture of his family, and he came in and he introduced himself, which is like, how did you not know who I am, you know? But we went into his office, and we started talking, and I said, "That's such a beautiful picture of your family in your lobby, but I need to ask you a question." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Which child of yours would you choose to lose their life the way my son did, the way that you're supporting the type of legislation that we need to end here in this country, to end this, you know, illegal crime spree that's going on?" And I was quickly ushered out of his office. We've got to have people who have a straight head on their shoulders and understand, number one, the oath that they're taking when they take that office, and the reasons behind why you are getting into office. If you're getting into office to protect and advocate for people who don't belong in our country, find a new job. And to know that we had a sitting president and a rat like Mayorkas heading up Department of Homeland Security, knowing what they were doing to those people, knowing what was happening. You know, when you look at the Darien Gap and everything that those people went through, and the environment and how it was completely trashed and ruined, and different countries that these illegals from Africa and the Middle East were coming to Central America and to Mexico, and what they were doing to those countries till they were able to access the United States. And then the border towns in Texas, how they were decimated. And the deserts in Arizona, they're trashed. Where's the humanitarians? Where's the environmentalists that the Democrats stand so thick with? Where are they when all this is going on to people? The humanitarian crisis that was happening to those people, but more importantly, what was happening to their fellow Americans, and then the environmentalists this Green New Deal. You don't care that our deserts and our lands are being trashed, and our crops in Yuma. These illegals would come through those fields and take a crap, and the whole field had to be, turned under because it wasn't anything that could be fit for human consumption. So many aspects of it that people don't understand who just listen to a newscast or read an article. I research this 24/7. This is all I've been doing for 11 years of my life. And you tell me one situation, I can tell you all about it. I've delved into the 287G program. I've delved into the Voice Office. I talked to Todd Thurman at USCIS. I dug deep into all of that. How could they do this, and what happens to those illegals who paid to be smuggled into our country? They can call the Voice hotline now and say, I'm a victim of human trafficking. And they were immediately sent over to USCIS, and USCIS immediately gave them a green card. This was all going on behind our backs. The crap that Mayorkas was pulling and the treason that he committed against our country, that man needs to be in prison. It affects so much more than just an open border. And then on top of that, the loss of innocent American lives. When you add that all up, especially the loss of innocent American lives, it's priceless. You can't even put a price on that. Think about losing one of your children in the way that I did. Your child is just ripped out of your life in the blink of an eye. Did I ever think that would happen to me? No. And I'm warning you, it can happen to any of you. There's still a lot of violent, illegal criminals in our country, and they're still committing heinous crimes, and it can happen to any one of you in the blink of an eye. You've got to pay attention. And what people who stand up for these criminals don't realize is the disgusting crimes that they committed against Americans. They're gang members, they're terrorists. Mm-hmm. They have no regard for human life. And if Trump has made this deal with El Salvador to send these guys down to those prisons, nothing gave me a greater joy than watching them being taken off of that plane and shoved to bending over and running down the tarmac, because they did that to people here. They do worse things than that to people here. And the humiliation and the realization that they're getting exactly what they did to somebody, except guess what? They're not getting killed. They're given a chance for a life down there in El Salvador. It might be in a prison, and might not be treated that well, but bravo to President Trump for thinking this plan up, and bravo to the El Salvadorian president for allowing this, working together to happen. If I don't, who will? I got to keep some of these angel moms sometimes, who've been out of it for a while, and build them up and tell them, this is our time, man. We got 3.5 years left now. We cannot sleep through this. We've been sidelined for 4 years. We had 4 great years with President Trump, and now is the time to take advantage of this, get as many unsolved cases as we can. You need to step forward, and you need to help me. And I can't stop, because if I stopped, that's just not in me. I can't. I won't. I'll be fighting this and standing up for my son and making sure everybody remembers him till the last breath that I draw on this earth.